Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Iron Woman. Today we go to a dear friend of mine. We used to work together. Sherman, when did we meet?
We met in 2006. I was getting ready to take the overseas assignment with Nestle, and you were the U.S. contact to help make the transition smooth.
And now where you are, now it's 2023, many moons later, and we're still in contact. We see what you're doing, traveling, enjoying life. Where are you now?
Right now, I'm in Florida. I left Washington, D.C. After I finished my overseas assignment in Paris with Nestle. I was transitioned back into Washington, D.C., where I stayed 7 years ago. And so now I'm down in South Florida and enjoying it immensely. Initially, it was not as easy to transition into, but I've learned to be a local instead of being a tourist or a visitor. And it makes a big difference.
How so? I always say when you have your routine, mundane stuff like cooking, laundry, that's when you become a local. How did you integrate?
Well, part of it was that there's a large network of people who live in Florida and South Florida who are from Washington, D.C. And when I came back to Washington, D.C. as an employee of Nestle, I met a lot of people who that's the nature of Washington, D.C. is that you're always meeting somebody new because there's so many people there that are involved in so many interesting things that you just want to know as many people as possible. So when I came to South Florida, there are several people that I had met in Washington that had moved down here. Having a small network that continually expands and moves makes it a lot easier to be able to be involved in things that are interesting and fun.
Tell us a little bit. I'm still intrigued. Your resume. Let's read this. Third child and first male of 11 children from 3 families, 5 moms and 5 fathers.
I thought that would make you interested. No, I came from a divorced family. My mom and my dad, there were 5 children. They separated and had new families. My mom had 2 additional children. My dad had 4 additional children. And I say I've got 6 parents because when I went to college, I went on an overseas assignment. And in the context of that overseas assignment, I was offered the opportunity to live with a family in Denmark. So I've got a Danish family, I've got a Jewish family, I've got my biological parents, and I've got the first family that I lived with when I went to Oregon as a college student. To me, we all know each other through the connecting ribbon. And so it's just been great having people that would never have known each other to know each other. It's just been one of those magical things in life that your friends know your friends, or your family know your friends, or your friends know your family. That's been great.
When I think of you, I always think you're on the go, traveling. What makes you the person that you are today?
I have a couple of factors that I attribute to having been my catalyst. And one is I went to a segregated elementary school. The principal of that school was very much a proponent of education. I was one of the kids in the neighborhood whose parents pushed me toward education. I liked books. I was at the library at least 3 times a week. I was oftentimes the teacher's pet. There were things that happened that encouraged me to keep following that path. And my parents were a big part of that. In addition, I had a high school English teacher, Mrs. Fry. She was just so wonderful. She and her husband had just finished an assignment in Saudi Arabia when she came to this tiny farm town in western Oklahoma. And she was telling all these stories about having lived in this foreign environment. And that was something that was the furthest from my reality that I could imagine. But it intrigued me enough that when I went to college, I wanted to work for the UN and be an interpreter. Well, that never happened. It just never happened. And so instead, I decided that just traveling would be the option that I had available to me. So every year I would take at least one or two really big vacations someplace that was places that I had never been before. And so now I still do as many trips as I can. And we were just talking about my trip to India. And I was in India at the time that COVID restrictions were going into place. And that was interesting watching how the Indian government was handling it, but also how the American government was handling it in a much more visible way because of just the exposure of America. Mm-hmm. Traveling is one of my pet things to do, is generally going someplace I haven't been before. I've been to over 70 countries, keep adding to them because, for example, I'm going on a vacation this coming October, doing a repositioning cruise from Rome to Fort Lauderdale. And in that cruise itinerary, there's going to be 3 new locations added to my list of places I've been that is different than where I've been before.
Where are they going to be?
I've never been to Gibraltar. I've never been to Funchal, which is a Portuguese location. I have never been to the Mediterranean coast of Portugal. And we're stopping in one island in the Caribbean. That is our last stop before coming to Fort Lauderdale. Just new places, not necessarily big places, but new places.
What is your favorite country if you have 70?
It's like asking who's your favorite parent. Is that know. each one would be, each place that I've been, I've enjoyed it immensely. Even if other people who've been there have not enjoyed it so much and are willing to verbalize that, I have never been any place that I would not go again. It's just, there's people to meet, there's things to learn, there's cultural things that can be enhancing. There's just so much to know about a place you go that one of the things that I hold dear is that never let yourself get into that negative mindset that after you've absorbed that particular position, everything else is bad. And yeah, there are experiences that are not always pleasant, but they add to the total experience of being in that place at that time.
I could not agree more with you. And it's you make it happen.
Yep. As I wake up every day and say that only I can make my day miserable. Other people can contribute to it, but only I can make it bad.
That's a good choice. And make it happen, make it positive, make it good.
Absolutely. Traveling is one of those things that I think everyone should be required to do at some point in their life because it makes your world a lot larger instead of a lot smaller. And the larger our world is, the more we understand and accept things about each other that we otherwise will become xenophobic. We have a routine that we accept as being the norm, and it's not necessarily the norm for everybody. It may be for you, but not for everybody. And exposure helps a lot.
And taking a risk. As Anthony Bourdain says, take the local food, talk to the local people, and don't be afraid.
I can remember an experience in Greece in terms of local. I took a ferry across from Brindisi, Italy to Patras, Greece. And this is 35 years ago when the ferry was the way to get across that strait. But it was like getting back to this small town of Patras, trying to figure out what to eat. And there were restaurants that had signboards out to tell you what their menus were, but they were all in Greek. And the owner of the shop did not speak English. We didn't speak any Greek. And the waitress gestured for us to come with her. She took us into the kitchen and we pointed at things we wanted. And we thought we were getting servings. We got a plate of everything. We chose 6 items that each of us chose. We had 12 plates at our table with plates waiting to come. It was a lesson in adjusting to the local cultures that no, you make sure they understand one and not all. But I love that story.
Oh, this is fantastic. And food is also kind of like helping each other to understand each other and communicate, even though we don't speak the language.
When I went to school in Denmark, an overseas study program for my college, one of the students and I, there were 24 students and 2 teacher leaders. And so one of the students and I lived 2 houses from each other in Denmark with these families. And so we try to think of what can we do that would be a thank you to these families for opening their homes up to us, that would be meaningful and memorable. And we settled in on doing hamburgers and French fries. It was funny because neither one of us were cooks. We were college students. But to us, tuna casserole was the thing that you did. We took on this role of making hamburgers. First of all, trying to find the ingredients. Hamburger buns were not hamburger buns. Trying to find ground beef that was to be molded into a patty. You had to go and get the Danish equivalent. It turned out fine, but the experience of doing it was like, oh my God, this is so hard. and even today, I'm still in contact with my Danish family. They remember that because they said they were just surprised the two of us were able to pull that off, and we did.
Well, you extended yourself. It's maybe we get a different appreciation when you go to a restaurant and you just order a hamburger because now how difficult it is.
But when you go into a foreign country asking for American food, is that more likely than not, you're not going to get American food. I guess for me as an American, a hamburger is about as American as you can get. And because they're a primary food in this country, going to a grocery store to get the ingredients, it's easy to find all the ingredients. But you go into a foreign environment and try to get the ingredients, it's improvising a lot. It's doing a lot of, well, it doesn't look like a hamburger bun, but we'll cut it in half and we'll pretend that it is, because our families were not fully aware of what a hamburger was on the American side, because at that time, many of them had never been to the U.S.
Whatever you made is the perfect hamburger.
It was the perfect hamburger as far as they were concerned.
When you're not traveling, what do you do?
Well, now I've got a passion for bicycling. We talked briefly earlier, and I just came back from a 20-mile bike ride with a biking group that we put together down here. There are 3 of us in the primary group, but there's a total of 7 of us that at one time we will all get together. Besides that, I've become very lazy. I am doing everything in the morning because that helps to adjust to the temperature. Is that if you wait until 11 or 12 o'clock, it gets very warm, especially in the summer. You get things done early in the day. For the afternoon, it usually is getting on the computer and getting some work done. And it's become a pretty lazy life, but I still try to keep busy doing as much as I can.
And what wisdom do you have for people who are listening to the podcast in terms of traveling or working out, or your philosophy of life?
Well, I guess the only insightful thing that I can say is that try to be a good person all the time, not just when your friends and your family are watching you, but try to be a good person so that there are people who recognize that you are an asset to their life and not a liability. Being in a building where there's a lot of people who are senior citizens, most of them have adapted to the philosophy that I'll just complain about everything all the time, rather than being part of the solution of asking, how can I help to make this different or easier? I've taken on the role of being a help to a neighbor of mine who is in a wheelchair. And I saw her one day trying to unload groceries. She's in her wheelchair with a shopping cart right next to the car. And I went up and asked if I could help her. And at first she was hesitant, but now it's been almost 2.5 years that I do her shopping. I take her to the doctor. It helps me as well to know that I'm doing something to be helpful, but it helps her because she finds me a reliable person to do those things. Just try to be a good person all the time, because right now it's so easy to fall back into the complaint mode or not doing things that are reasonable or accepting other people's opinion as being valid. Just be a good person all the time.
Thank you so much for this insight. Be a good person all the time.
All the time.
Also helps you to be more positive and be a good person towards you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for that reconnect, and happy and safe travels, and also safe travels on the bike.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. What are you taking away from this episode? 70 countries to travel to. Which is your favorite travel story? Take it from the Iron Woman. We have episodes every Monday with interesting people who have special stories to share. And Take It from the Iron Woman is also the book, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. Get it in your local bookstore or download it. Thank you for your support. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.